Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the community of independent thinkers, those who dare to stare into the abyss of power politics, stripping away the lies of the mainstream media to face the naked truth. The elites in Washington and Western capitals are telling you that the ongoing conflict is just a regional hiccup. They peddle the illusion that the unmatched power of the American military machine will easily extinguish this fire. Do not believe them. What we are witnessing is not a glorious impending victory. It is the bloody collapse of a massive strategic delusion, a tragedy of our own making. Look at the material reality manifesting on the water. Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important energy choke point that carries about 1/5 of all crude oil. The mainstream press is desperately trying to pacify the public by emphasizing that the mining is not extensive yet, with a few dozen having been laid in recent days. A pathetic display of naivety. The ruthless reality is that Iran still retains upward of 80 to 90% of its small boats and mine layers. Its forces could feasibly lay hundreds of mines in the waterway. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps now effectively controls the strait along with Iran's traditional navy. They have the capability to deploy a gauntlet of dispersed mine-laying craft, explosive-laden boats, and shore-based missile batteries. The IRGC previously warned that any ship passing through the strait would be attacked, and the channel has effectively been closed since the start of the war. The state of the strait has been described to CNN as a death valley given the risks involved in transiting. U.S. officials said Tuesday that the U.S. Navy had not escorted any vessels through the strait. Trump also said during a Monday press conference that the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain safe, claiming we have the best equipment in the world inspecting for mines. But equipment does not alter the structural reality of asymmetric warfare. This is not a mere traffic disruption. This is a global war of economic attrition being activated. Let us quantify this disaster with cold material numbers. Nearly 15 million barrels per day of crude production, plus another 4.5 million barrels per day of refined fuels, are now effectively stranded in the Gulf. Producers like Iraq and Kuwait have no alternative to shipping oil through Hormuz. Do you understand what this massive number means for the operational structure of the world? Uncertainty surrounding the ability to move oil through the waterway appeared to be causing severe volatility on the crude oil market on Tuesday, with the price per barrel fluctuating between more than $90 and less than $80 in a series of peaks and valleys. This disruption will sever the energy bloodline feeding entire industrial centers. The G7 group of large economies has hinted it could move to release more oil to try to offset the shortages. But this is a band-aid on a gaping wound. Iran is aiming to increase economic pain to influence Trump to call the war short, something the president has rejected. So long as a conflict is continuing in the heart of a vital transit route, there will be economic aftershocks felt globally. The global economy will bleed. Why are we spiraling into this death vortex? Do not explain this away with empty words like madness or evil nature. Let us dissect the internal political survival mechanism. The anarchic system structure and domestic political pressure do not allow anyone to back down. In Washington, President Donald Trump said in a post on Truth Social on Tuesday that if Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, we want them removed immediately. He added that if mines were placed and they are not removed, Iran will face consequences at a level never before seen. He said, however, that if Tehran removes what may have been placed, it will be a giant step in the right direction. On Monday, Trump sent mixed signals, calling the war a short-term excursion that could end soon, while also saying it should not end before Iran no longer has any capacity whatsoever for a very long period of time of developing weaponry that could be used against the U.S., Israel, or any of our allies. Why this chaotic messaging? Because his hands are tied by domestic politics. Following Trump's post, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth posted on X that at Trump's direction, U.S. Central Command has been eliminating inactive mine-laying vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, wiping them out with ruthless precision. U.S. Central Command said in a social media post later Tuesday that the military destroyed multiple Iranian naval ships, including 16 mine layers, near the Strait of Hormuz. From one moment to the next, this Iran crisis appears to be cascading in ways that are increasingly uncertain for governments, investors, and ordinary citizens alike. Much now turns on the individual decisions of unpredictable leaders, including President Donald Trump, and now perhaps Iran's new and untested supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. On the other side, Tehran is operating under an equally ruthless logic of survival. The military objective, as described by the Pentagon, is to degrade Iran's ability to project power outside its borders. That means striking Iran's missiles and missile production facilities, drones and drone manufacturing facilities, naval forces, air forces, command and control structures, and what's left of its nuclear program. Degrading a country's military capacity is a viable military mission, and it takes time. Officials at a Pentagon briefing on Tuesday refused to discuss timeframes, and the White House confirmed the original timeframe as being 4 to 6 weeks. Faced with the existential threat of being stripped of their entire defensive capability, Iran is weaponizing its geography. They are terrified. They are backed into a corner. And in an anarchic system, a cornered regional power will always be willing to drag the entire world down into the mud with it. This brings us to the historical axis and the root cause of the tragedy. Today's events are the inevitable endpoint of a path dependence stretching back decades. The West has continually violated the laws of the balance of power with supreme arrogance. We believed we could impose order on distant regions through brute force and promises of phantom democracy. Now, in the Middle East, the elites are hallucinating about a base case scenario, holding a 60% probability. On the base case scenario, Trump provides the military the time it needs to complete this defined mission of degrading Iran's power projection. This scenario presumes by the end of this month that Iran's power projection capacity and defense industrial base is significantly degraded, but that its political structures remain intact. The high-intensity military campaign would cease, having met its defined objective, but without promise of regime change in Tehran. From there, U.S. and international sanctions would remain firmly in place against Iran unless and until its new government agreed to stop pursuing a nuclear program and give up its long-range ballistic missile program. Militarily, the U.S. and Israel would continue to patrol Iran's skies with limited risk, given Iran's lack of air defenses. This base case over the coming months and even years might resemble Iraq in the 1990s. Weakened, contained, and with American pilots overhead to deter future threats. This self-deception is staggering. History shows that external military pressure alone rarely produces rapid regime collapse without organized internal and armed opposition. The objective is to degrade Iran's power projection outside of its own borders, not to degrade its ability to exert power inside Tehran, something that would likely require U.S. ground forces or an organized opposition force. Neither of those are likely available in this military campaign, and without them, the likelihood of a near-term regime change in Tehran remain low at best. Meanwhile, who benefits from this tragedy? Apply strategic empathy and look at the third-party calculus. Peer competitors in Asia are watching the Death Valley and Hormuz very closely. They see the United States refusing to cut its losses in peripheral regions to focus on the true peer competitor. They learn an invaluable lesson. Setting a war of attrition trap using cheap asymmetric weapons can tie down the most powerful naval force on the planet, incinerate billions of tax dollars, and exhaust the political will of the adversary. The worst-case scenario, at 30%, would see economic shocks force Trump's hand to declare victory prematurely before the military campaign has run its course. This would leave behind an Iran with power structures reconsolidated, embittered, and emboldened, and with its military and nuclear capacity intact enough to be reconstituted. The region would be left even less stable, as the Gulf states would remain under constant threat of an Iran with expanding missile and drone capabilities, which Tehran has proved willing to use. This scenario might draw the United States deeper into the Middle East, required to further support the defenses of Gulf partners after confronting thousands of missiles and drones, and with the U.S. military campaign pulled short before destroying those capabilities. The costs of doing business in the region, from shipping insurance to long-term capital deployment, could rise sharply before a new equilibrium develops. The Trump administration projects determination to carry the campaign to conclusion despite those shocks, but the president also signals a reverse gear may come at any moment. A decision to reverse course before the U.S. military completes the task it was given would risk a more unstable regional balance. Whatever the merit of launching this war, an early halt to the campaign would risk leaving Iran's regime emboldened and the region and the world in an even more precarious position. Western naivety in believing they can manipulate other nations like pawns on a chessboard always ends in blood and tears. The most likely outcome is not a clean resolution, but a weaker and more contained Iran with new regional balances of power and uncertainty as to where this all leads. We have led ourselves down the primrose path straight into hell. Stay safe, remain vigilant, and never stop questioning the delusions of power. The truth is still out there. I will see you next time.